Hello, this is April 1st, 2021, and this is Randall Burns with As the World Burns. Today, the topic is non-traditional risk, prediction markets, forecasting, and investing. Ben Graham's The Intelligent Investor was a major step forward in the investment literature. And he systematized a field that was, at the time, pretty riddled with superstition and tradition. For many investors, the advice in that book boils down now to simple index investing. Buy the S&P 500 and be done with it. Don't worry about much else. And there are certain underlying assumptions of that type of investing. That the dollar will continue to be the dominant international reserve currency, that there will not be another major war, that the US will continue to be stable. And that's kind of implicit within that strategy. And when you listen to Warren Buffett, for example, on that one, that is very much undergirds his whole thinking on the investment topic. He's had decades of stable conditions, and he's assuming that because he's had decades that's going to continue to be the case. Now, I'm writing this largely with people from the United States in mind. I'm obviously speaking in English. It's my native language. I'm a US citizen, and I'm writing it with Americans in mind and people in the broader US sphere of influence. But I would argue that simple index investing seems to avoid some potential risks. Now, in the modern era, it's a little more sophisticated than that. I give in the description below, I give some link to Ray Dalio's all-weather portfolio, which is a variation on index investing, which is a little more heavy on bonds and also includes commodities fund also, as well as gold. And I think that's a little better, but it's not. I don't think it's quite what we need in a situation like this. Forecasting sites and prediction markets are not really yet capable of dealing with everything we need in this kind of a situation. But I'm going to give you some examples of what's out there now just to get you started and get your thinking started along these lines. Now, first off, the risk of a catastrophic political situation in the US the next 10 years seems to be under 10%, well under 10%, probably under 5%. That's according to a will there be another civil war claim on Metaculus. However, there are some very disturbing trends that I think need to be noted here, okay? The United States has been declining in political stability as measured by the Fragile State Index, which is a major academic index that ranks countries by political stability. Okay, the U.S. for the last 10-year period was one of the 10 most declining countries in the world, and it appears posed to repeat that again. Okay. Now, is the U.S. a failed state? No, it's well above that, but the trend is in a bad direction, and it doesn't seem to be reversing anytime soon. And so this is a question just to kind of ask yourself, what's underlying this, and right now it appears, okay, according to Metaculus, there's a 55% chance that the US is going to repeat this performance as a less stable country again. I personally put the odds at closer to 90%. And that's a longer discussion on that one that we don't want to have right now. But there are other US trends that are very disturbing. The democracy index of the United States is in decline. According to the Economist Democracy Index, the US is now in the same category as Singapore. Okay, the US that largely invented modern representative democracy is now in the basically being told that it's a glorified banana republic. This is not a positive trend. The corruption perceptions index of the United States is declining. Now, that's the perception. I actually think that understates it, because when you look at things like the performance of literally every major regulatory industry, highly regulated industry in the US is below international standards. Healthcare, education, justice, transportation. They all have very real problems. And the problems aren't really being discussed yet that I can see. Okay, we have a government that is largely for sale. Members of Congress spend more time begging funds from rich donors than they do attending to the public business. This is not a formula for good government. Our contemporary lawmakers are very specialized creatures that know how to run slick campaigns and know how to raise funds, and they don't know how to do much else for the most part. Now, I would love to see one of them get on Metaculus and exceed my predictive score on 20 or more claims, and I'll publicly reverse that. But until I see some evidence like that, I'm going to be persistent in that attitude. The US life expectancy is declining. Now, this is a major economic indicator, okay? And it's actually undergirds one of the major alternatives to GDP, for example. So this is not good news, right? And that is supported by increased suicide rate, increased rate of substance abuse. Both alcohol and opioids are major contributing factors. There is a epidemic of loneliness and isolation in the US. I give some links below to that. These are not positive trends, and I don't see anything on the horizon anytime soon that's going to reverse any of that. Okay, and I've seen this, like, for example, in my own family, just the destruction that this causes, and it's just incredible. Okay. Now, this is a depletion of a very important form of social capital. This is something that, even just thinking strictly from the standpoint of economics and investment, it undergirds quite a lot. Okay, and there's stuff that appears in the GDP that really doesn't have anything to do with economic welfare. Like, if you have an increased number of house fires, that'll increase GDP without increasing economic well-being at all. Same thing with certain types of crime, for example, also. This is something we were taught at U of Chicago in the introductory econ course. We were taught, basically how to take GDP with a grain of salt. Okay, it's very, very basic stuff. Okay, now on the plus side, there's stuff happening in the tech sector. Okay, Tesla Motors, for example, appears, according to the Metaculus forecast, appears very likely to be producing over 3 million vehicles a year by 2025. And this is and the Las Vegas Loop, which is a novel form of public transportation using Tesla vehicles, appears to be on track to be automated by the end of 2023. So those are really positive trends, and those also have economic importance. Okay, it's going to enable people to access cheaper property than what they can now, which enables them to literally vote with their feet and improve their living standards in ways that are important to them. Now, the other side of it is that Tesla advances may drive down key parts of the U.S. financial markets, because there are you have a lot of auto dealers and a lot of companies that are built with kind of the old regime in mind, and some of them are going to have some real problems. I seriously question, for example, if Ford and GM are going to survive um, the shakedown here. I just don't think they can. I think they've been stuck hiring mediocre technical talent for so long that I question whether they can make the jump when they have to in a situation like this. I'd love to be proven wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but time will tell. Okay. Now, how does this translate into my investment portfolios? Okay. Uh, Rather than I don't invest in BTI, which is a broad stock index. I will invest in ARK funds. I like the ARK funds. They give me a broad exposure to the U.S. tech sector. The U.S. tech sector, most of it's in the U.S. tech sector. Some of it's overseas companies also. So there is some international diversification there. The tech industry, I believe, is in a better position actually to survive a true disruptive event than other U.S. companies, because the other U.S. companies depend on existing U.S. infrastructure, which is largely decaying and out of date. The tech companies, if there is a real disruptive event, can easily find homes in other places. There's a variety of countries that would love to have these companies, would bend over backwards to get them. They would be easily welcomed in a variety of locations. There isn't anything quite like the U.S. tech companies, but and so yes, that's why they are highly desirable from a variety of angles. Okay, I I personally invest in commodities more heavily than Ray Dalio does. I understand, I grew up on a farm. I understand the commodities markets a little bit more intuitively than a lot of people do as a result of that experience. And and I also invest in strategic metal ETFs. I don't consider gold to be really a commodity index. I consider it to be a money substitute. So in my thinking, it goes into that one. The bulk of my personal assets are in a Northwest timber property. That is my personal residence. And I live in a very isolated area. I live off the grid. I generate my own electricity. I can easily go for weeks at a time without leaving this property. And that's come in handy during the pandemic. I was already prepared in a lot of ways and simply didn't have a lot of problems during the pandemic as a result, except for isolation. And my doing this channel in part is a way to kind of start reaching out to people again. I do invest in Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold. I see those as decent money substitutes. I'm distrustful of the dollar under the amount of money supply creation that I see happening and how I see it being distributed. It's worrisome to me, so I simply don't go there for the most part. The more I read about Ethereum, the more I like it, and it from a technical angle, and that gives me a little bit of diversity there. These all introduce a degree of volatility, but I have substantial credit lines, so that gives me a little bit of protection there. And I think that's a better deal for me than investing in bond funds and paying interest on debt. So that's how I do it that way. And I consider it to be a risk mitigation thing. So that's how I'm handling and preparing for this situation. That shows, and you can look at my Metaculus profiles both on the pandemic site and on the main site. That'll give you in excruciating detail some of the positions that I have taken, and you can look at my thinking there and see how that corresponds to you and how you may want to adjust it as a result. I would love to hear from more people on this and see what they're doing, but I think that Metaculus is a really good starting off point for communication on thinking about this as opposed to verbal communication on it. I think that it just gives us a lot better and more detailed and more nuanced view of how we see the potential futures ahead. I've also included links to my blog post on Quora. I have thousands of blog posts there. I get about 100,000 hits there a month. And I'm trying to expand this because I think it's a little broader appeal than the blog post. So thank you for visiting. Please do like this video and please do subscribe to my channel. I want to get you more content, and I'd like your support in this one. And feel free to comment. I love comments. I will respond to them. Look forward to hearing from you all, and I'm here because I care about people. You take care. This is Randall Burns, As the World Burns, signing off.